Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Deffinition, aka Mr. Marvel, and with a brand new Avengers game right around the corner, it's the perfect time to go back and revisit the original project that was supposed to be centered around the MCU. Throughout this video, I'll be breaking down everything you need to know about the cancelled Avengers game, as well as all the gameplay mechanics, story, and more. Before we dive into it fully, let me take you way back to 2012. The MCU was just about to become the most successful movie universe of all time, and whilst it was making a huge impact on the big screen, there'd been many failed attempts to try and replicate this in the video game market. Whether it was Iron Man 1 and 2, the Captain America spin-off game, or many of the mobile titles, nothing really seemed to be cracking the market in the same way that the Arkham franchise had slowly started to. In 2010, THQ acquired the rights to produce an Avengers video game that was set to launch in 2012 across all platforms in line with the film. However, this game was not meant to be a pure adaptation of the film, and was instead a completely original piece featuring enemies like the Super Skrulls and more. Originally, it was planned to be a third-person action game, in the same vein as some of the adaptations that had come before it. However, after doing rigorous testing with Captain America to see how the combat could play out, THQ decided to switch to a first-person view that would put you in the perspective of your favourite heroes. Whilst I've seen some sources report that this was because there were several other third-person games out at the time involving the heroes that didn't really deliver, I personally think this change was made due to the popularity of first-person shooters such as Call of Duty. You can even see from some of the early gameplay footage that XP counters litter the screen, similar to COD, and give off the impression that you're building points towards leveling up. The game was to be heavily based around co-op, with each player entering a sort of arena as their chosen Avenger to take on waves of enemies. The many arenas ranged around King of the Hill, death matches, capture the flag, and more. Each character had a different set of abilities, with Hulk and Thor being more about brute strength, whereas Iron Man and Captain America were fast, agile, and able to fire projectiles. Each player could perform an assist on an enemy, which played out in a third-person finishing move, and really feels like big wow moments when you're watching the gameplay. THQ really wanted this to play out like the Avengers did on the big screen, with each one of them working together to combat the Skrull invasion, which is what the story was centered around. The plot was penned by Brian Michael Bendis, who had written Secret Invasion, which heavily focused around the Skrulls, and it's definitely clear that THQ were trying to make this graphic novel the main focus of the game's narrative. The Skrulls, as I'm sure many of you know, can mimic the appearance and abilities of heroes, and lots of the boss battles were takes on different characters such as Wolverine, Spider-Woman, and more. The game opens with the Skrulls trapping the Fantastic Four in the negative zone before setting their sights on the world and trying to take down the planet. This worldwide war would see the heroes jumping from location to location, and many of the early concept art shows places like Triskelion, the Helicarrier, New York, and the Savage Land. This was all in an effort to take down the Skrulls, but other plot elements and side bosses focused around Ultron and an evil version of Vision, which the characters would have to face off against on their quest. In the end, the heroes would go up against the Queen Skrull and a genetically modified Super Skrull that had been created underground by the villains. The game finished with the Avengers of course winning, but apparently it set up sequels involving more characters from the universe. So why did it get cancelled? Well, by 2011 the game was still massively behind. As with most movie tie-ins, there's always a looming deadline, and perhaps the project wasn't as permitting to the experimentation that THQ were wishing to do on the work. At one point, the studio even outsourced it to Blue Tongue Entertainment, who worked on a lot of environment pieces and the PC port. THQ at this point was spending a lot of money on this game in order to make it a success. However, after the release of Homefront, which caused a massive stock crash of more than 20% in 24 hours for the company, the business went into dire straits. Add to this their U-Draw project, which bombed massively, and you have a company that is barely getting by due to a number of bad choices and the projects that disappointed. In order to try and delay the company's inevitable crash and gain some sure footing, directors of the business decided that now was the time to cut back on the bigger projects that were ballooning in price, and thus the Avengers game became the first thing in the firing line. This is due massively to the inflation of the Australian dollar in 2011, which also meant that THQ were paying a lot more for the same amount of work, and thus layoffs had to happen, and there simply wasn't enough manpower to maintain the project. The game was very near completion, but apparently even this wasn't enough to save it. THQ Australia was shut down, and after failing to secure funding from Marvel, they were unable to continue such an expensive venture. Whilst I'm sure many of us wish that we could take a trip back into the quantum realm to save this game whatever it takes, unfortunately it seems like it's something that's forever going to be lost. I, as I'm sure you, would have loved to have played it, but I guess we'll never get the chance to now that tech has moved so far forward and the MCU has changed in so many ways. Obviously, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the game, and if you're looking forward to the new Avengers 1 coming out next year, which hopefully will redeem this cancelled project. Comment below and let me know, and if you enjoyed this video then please like it and make sure you check out my breakdown of all the Far From Home spoilers that we have from the premiere. It covers all of the apparent ins and outs of the plot, so it's definitely worth checking out if you want to know more about the MCU movie. I'll leave that linked at the end, and I'll see you over there after this video. This is a channel for people who are super into superheroes, so if that's the kind of thing you like, hit subscribe. Thanks again for taking the time to watch this. I've been Deffinition, you've been the best, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.